All of you that have all but given up on trying to find affordable housing and watching the Florida market trickle back to 2-3 years ago have been sitting on the sidelines absolutely frustrated, and all of the current owners across Florida that are sitting there saying, this time it's different, it's not going to change. You are not seeing some major shifting that's heading right now to this particular state. If you have a good grasp on the data like you will after you watch this video, you are going to see that all of the tea leaves are lining up precisely the way they were back in 2006 to 2008. Now, Florida, for its own sake, has its own headwinds right now. You got the NAACP warning all minorities that it's a super dangerous place to travel right now. Disney World, in the feud with our governor, has recently pulled the plug on a $1 billion campus that was slated to transfer 2,000 more jobs from California. Peter Thiel, who is not exactly a lefty, out of Silicon Valley said, hey, you know what? I'm not moving my company to Miami. It's untenable. It's too expensive. It doesn't make sense to transition out of an expensive location like Silicon Valley. And there's a lot of signs that migration to the state of Florida is absolutely dropping, folks. Today, I'm going to do a thorough job letting you see exactly how dire some of the data is predicting that this fall and winter is going to be. Many of these predictors are also valid for many of the other states in the union right now. You're seeing markets like Boise and Las Vegas already undergoing major shifts to price. And this leads us to a lot of people scratching their head, because when you looked at Florida in the fall of last year, after housing prices absolutely peaked in the summer of 2022, interest rates scared everybody. They went to a 23-year high. They hit 7.3% last year. Absolutely shuttered the market, folks. Florida, as I'm going to show you today, had prices dip very dramatically. And folks, I got to tell you, with the most recent activity from the Fed, this dynamic of shifting the housing market in the fall and the winter for Florida and for many other states is right in front of us. But if you wouldn't mind, share this great update with a friend on your social media or any social media resource that you have to get the word out. But with that groundwork being laid, let's jump into the news. For this time, it's different. This market's not going to crash this time. The marketplace is far different. You know, folks, listen, everybody can have a 3% interest rate, but if we are seeing people in Florida pay 40 to 50% of their disposable income to own a house and beyond. Now, the interest rate is now hovering at 7.12% as I'm shooting this video, which is not affordable for locals. Locals in Florida are now well beyond the pale. And as you can see, this is a graph that actually shows income levels versus cost of owning a home. And it's as high in Florida as it's ever been, only reached about 27.5% last time. Now, folks, you can see if we roll back prices and interest rates to some small degree, you can see back in 2018, 2019, it was 11, 13%. Now it's triple that number. And the reason why it's triple that number is because people moved in, mass migration, hundreds of thousands of people remained in the state of Florida from other places because of remote work offerings, all those kinds of things, bringing all their cash. And as far as the market's concerned, the price is so high compared to now interest rate changes that we're going to see some dramatic shift here in the fall. Let me show you one of the most important graphs I like to watch. Instead of just watching median or average home price, is what's called the month over month home value growth graph. Now, if you imagine home value growth in a given month, you're going to see it go up or down. One month to the next, it's going to drop or it's going to go up. Now, imagine this as kind of the measure of a market's velocity. If a market is on fire every month, it's seeing 1-2% price gain month after month, which means on an annual basis, if you're gaining 2% per month in increase in price, you're going to see your home price up 20-25% at the end of the year, much is like we saw this market cycle. And surprise, we saw it last market cycle, 2% average price gains. It peaked. Now, the interesting thing, folks, the reason why I like this graph is because it's measuring activity month to month. It shows you on a given month, was the month hot or was it cold or was it cooling or was it heating up? Now, folks, you can see that the spring of 2022, the game was over. The car had maxed itself out. And then going into the fall of last year, it simmered down and actually cooled to a point of where we saw prices fall over a span of 5 or 6 months, going from summer, midsummer, July in Florida, June, July, all the way to the end of the year, about 6% price change across the state. No matter where you looked, you saw a dip in that span. Now, as you can see, as price fell, you can see the marketplace at the beginning of this year turn back up. You have this reverse J action right here, this like inverted J, backwards J, if you will. You know, the funny thing is, folks, you got one over here too. So you actually saw the market pace in the last market cycle. This is very important because I'm going to do some comparison. You need to see when did the market cycle, because everybody thinks Bear Stearns, they think Lehman Brothers, they think when? 07 late, maybe 08. They think that's when market turmoil started. Not in Florida, folks. Deceleration in Florida started back in 2005. So the end of 2005 going into 2006, I remember the marketplace. I was selling real estate in Las Vegas at the time, another hotbed for real estate market cycling. And I realized as I'm driving around, dropping buyers off in 2006, going, what is going on? That weird funk that I think some realtors started to describe for themselves took place right here. Now, as luck would have it, folks, the whole reality that we're experiencing right here purely happened because interest rates shot up from very low lows of 2.5 to 3.5, 4% range to the end of last year. Going into November, rates went all the way up to about 7.3%, and they fell off a cliff. I'd say a cliff. It dropped about a point. But in November, interest rates come back down, and all of a sudden the market's like, we're back. Let me show you a different vantage point on the same scenario. As you can see, we had Florida for the longest running time running inventory, 80, 90,000 homes on the market, actively available in Florida. Look, as the pandemic took place, tons of money hits the marketplace. You had the inventory fall down to about 28,000 homes, which is far, far less. We needed 3 times that much inventory. Inventory is super low, and then it climbed over the fall. Look, inventory then comes off that bottom of 30,000, climbs and doubles, goes all the way up to about 60,000 active units. That's all it took, folks. For us to lose 6% in value is we went from a 30,000 home inventory level to 60,000, which, by the way, historically speaking, 60,000 is low. It is low. But folks, this gives you an idea of the reality of when things start to shift towards the buyer. It becomes market knowledge. Buyers get more upper hand, even if it's slight. Because here's the reality, folks. There's not enough supply there to last very long. I mean, off the top of my head, 60, 70,000 units in Florida, if you stop listing all the homes, if no listings went on the market, you only had that much to deal with, take like 2.5, 2.8 months to sell that inventory off. That is arguably a hot market. But home prices are so high versus interest rates going north of 7%. It's enough to swing the power a little bit in the buyer's favor. It knocked the market 6%. Why is this so important? Because right now we came into this turn of this year at a 6% interest rate, gave the buying public enough power and hope and incentive to come back in the market that it actually dropped inventory like 10,000 units. So we actually had inventory come down. Price regained some power. Sellers are now in the driver's seat again. And buyers who were really feeling hopeful in the fall, like everybody in Florida is like watching these videos in the fall, like, oh my gosh, like everybody predicting a crash. It's happening right this second. Everybody, they might be right. And as buyers, we're starting to see a glimmer of light. It's almost like if you're playing the lottery, this is the way buyers felt. All 6 numbers are the winning numbers. You turn it in for your winnings, and then you find out that 1,000 other people also had the same numbers. And so you end up making $100 instead of $1 million. And so the reality is it turns on you. And this is what's happened with our market. But I'm telling you folks, right now, you are now seeing interest rates getting so high in the last 30 days, all the metrics that piled up in the fall that caused price to crash down, even if briefly, even if a brief transition, it's all starting back up again. Case in point, same exact thing we saw in the fall of last year. Mortgage rates have been so volatile. This is the Mortgage Bankers Association. This is a weekly survey they put out, says that purchase applications falling to its lowest level in 2 months, which is more than 40% off of last year's spring summer pace, meaning people are not applying for mortgages. Now, this is bad news. Why is this bad news? Because people assume that here in Florida, everybody's bounding into the state from somewhere else with loads of cash. Well, look at this. This is the Q1 statistics for the state of Florida. Look at paid in cash sales. Cash sales are down 28.5%. The last couple months, it's worse. It's hovering at 30, 31%. People that are coming in the market with cash are not there. And folks, that's a big deal because so much of the last year, 2 years has been hyped up because people are moving in the area. And this is a sign, folks, when you see 1 out of 3 cash buyers fall out of the mix, that means what? That means your main inbound person who's pricing up your market is leaving the conversation. The other thing we've noticed, Redfin recently reported that the amount of people putting a lot of money down on their mortgages, that's dropped. And so the 30% less money into mortgages than there were. So for instance, that was common for us to see around 15% was the average down payment. It's now down around 10%, which means there's a lot less money even coming into down payments. Means those high competitive multiple offer situations where you're seeing people with all cash or high cash currents is dropping. And that's all because equity is leaving the market in a lot of other marketplaces. In Florida, folks, this is what you're gonna see happen. Average sale price is marginally flat to last year, okay? So we're looking at Q1 2023 versus Q1 2022. It's 1.1% difference. And folks, that's gaining some juice back because this marketplace was down in the fall and we're starting to see that mortgage rates are now getting completely out of hand. And as a result, we're seeing inventories drop. We're going to have to see how that holds because coming in the fall, people are in a lot different position. But folks, one of the things that I promised to share with you is some of the comparison with the last market crash, the last market cycle, and ultimately, why are things not as different as you think they are? Well, take a look at this, folks. This is the span of time when people were getting mortgages last time, average rates, if you will, for a long range mortgage. Now, I fully understand that there was a lot of people that weren't just getting 30-year fixed mortgages. They had hybrid type products, things that were pay options and ARM rates and all these kinds of things. But look at the actual cost basis that these loans were funded from. You can see right here in this span of time, 03, 04, it was 5 to 6.5%, folks. Look back, look on this chart. See, follow it back. Do you see a time in history that you got to understand when we were back in this frame of time, these were the lowest interest rates that we had seen. The Fed rate was at 1%. If you look at the actual Fed funds rate and how money was being pushed in the market back then, monetary policy after 2001, the Twin Towers fell, there was a blip of a recession. Alan Greenspan wrecked interest rates. And again, folks, I think the central bankers take advantage. They go, oh, there's a recession. They create ways to obligate a lot of people into debt. Now, again, I'm being theorist now, okay? And don't, I'm analyzing our institutions and saying, this is what happened. How do you explain the outcome? So here's the deal, folks. Interest rates through the last down cycle, the actual basis for mortgage rates were funded were at record lows at that time. I can almost hear people at that time saying, get another mortgage. You can handle it. Don't worry. It's record lows. Like everybody's got a 5.5% or 6% interest rate. This is the lowest we've ever seen. My grandparents had 18%. Folks, we're just at a different pace. We're just borrowing different sums of money on a lower interest rate. Because folks, do you understand? In Florida, the average cost of a home in Florida in 2008 was around $220,000. It went up to $600,000. It peaked at right around $600,000, threefold increase practically, 300% more in just that span of time. So you got to understand, we're talking different numbers. We're talking, different correlates, but we're not exactly looking at other issues as well in the market. Let me show you another example of what I mean. Look at the amount of borrowed money. Okay, so this is the marketplace, hundreds of billions, by the way. This is hundreds of billions considered on this chart when you see 300, 320. This is how much consumer credit card debt was on humans at this time, right? So you had all these people come up and borrow up to almost $400 billion, and then boom, they go all file bankruptcy. I remember it. It was all kinds of bankruptcy activity, and then it drops, and then people get right back on the horse, and coming into 2020, they borrow almost $900 billion, and then the Fed gives all kinds of money to pay your credit cards off, so all the stimmy money went to the bankers. But look where it is now, folks. Wait. Everybody is doing so well. Unemployment is super low, and wages are so great, and everybody's living so lavish. on their cheap, low interest mortgage that we now owe max almost $1 trillion in credit card debt? Come on. If the people are being wrung out, what is going to happen to their home if they have a little blip in the apple cart and their check to check process? Everybody's living maxed out because here's the deal, folks. Even though the CPI, the index that measures inflation, has come down to 4.9%, take a look for me at the branches of where inflation is for shelter, for food outside the home, for service costs. They're all super high still. They're all 7, 8, 9. They're not dropping. So the Fed is dealing with the reality of sticky inflation still. They have the situation where the inflation that affects us, people that are living in the middle class, the upper middle, the lower middle class, those situations are still tight nooses around the necks of this check to check culture. Let me show you this further. One other major indicator that Americans are strapped is this right here. This is, as you can see, I'm highlighting the span of time towards the end of 2022, where the percentage of income that Americans were able to save was at record lows. Money is literally, look at this, coming down the end of 2022, money is coming in the door of the American's household and leaving out the back. The reality is when you start to see this amount of cash being so low, people aren't even able to save 5% of what they're earning. And folks, this is a record low. If you go back in history, back we're in 60s, 70s gold standard time frames, all this, we're changing how monetary policy works. People had 14, 13, 15% of their money going in to savings. Fast forward into the 80s, you've got Greenspan take over, all this Fed monetary policy. Look at this. People since the 2000 range have been lucky to put 5% of their money in the bank. One of the things I really want to call your attention to is this bottom out that took place in 2001, which was actually the recession caused. This is literally October, the month after. There was a blip in that situation, and it comes back to about 5% pretty fast. But look at this, folks. This is July of 2005. This is the time frame when Florida hits the rocks. I just showed you earlier, August 2005 was really when the Florida market lost. The gas just gurgled out the bottom of the tank. The power was out of the engine. There was no price propulsion anymore. And it started the dominoes, which eventually toppled this market by 40, 50% in most areas. Look at this. 2.1% is the savings rate. That was right in the heart of 2005. Why? Because people's credit cards were getting maxed out. People's cost of living was getting so high. Everything was inflating. The Fed knew it, by the way. The Fed knew this back in 2004. If you look at the trends, the Fed saw the exact same thing taking place. They were at near 0% interest rates at this time when the market spiraled and prices in the last pop, the last bubble kind of blew to a point of untenable math. All that took place. The Fed started jacking the rates up, from a 1% bottom because 2001, they had to take action. Greenspan knocks it all the way down. Like it had never been down to 1% in a massive amount of time, years and years and years, never been down to 1%. It gins up the economy and drives prices through the roof. People are taking crazy risks, creating loans that should have been made. Then what happens? He slows and tips the economy. You know where the interest rate went for when this period of time took place? 5.25%. 5 to 5.25% is where Greenspan took the rates before the whole apple cart tipped over. In the modern era, interest rates then go back down to zero when the whole system nearly collapses. They're held down very, very low. You know where they're back again? They're back to 5, 5.25. So we're now at the top end of the numbers, folks. The exact same rate level that tipped the apple cart last time is where we are now. Folks, if you look back at the history of time, our economy could take high interest rates from the Fed. Like in the 70s and 80s, prices weren't so out of control. Well, the Fed is used to bringing the freaking monetary policy way down, pushing prices. And when they come back with a 5.25 rate, folks, 5.25, you start to see that it's untenable for the economy. Take a look at the unemployment rate. Now, this is particularly in Florida. This is important because, folks, people think that unemployment rate was super high at the exact same time as the prices hit bottom. In Florida, as we hit the bottom, unemployment got so hot that it came down to 2.5%, and already it's game over. When we saw the marketplace so red hot, unemployment goes so low that it was game over for the market, and then it took off the other side. Now, by the way, folks, by the time this had made the turn and started to climb, housing was already going down. Housing was already like losing steam. It was getting worse, and it only got worse, obviously exacerbated as our economy ended up at an 8-9% unemployment rate. Now, guess what, folks? You don't have to worry this time because the Federal Reserve, we just read their meeting minutes, by the way, May just came out. They said to us, it's going to be bad. It's going to be bad this fall. It's going to be bad this winter. They're going to expect a 4.5%, definitely over 4.5-ish upper level unemployment from where it is now, where we're now going to see this kind of turn. Look at this, folks. Imagine if we get to 4.5%. 4.5% unemployment in Florida, by the way, was somewhere in the early parts of January. Look at the marketplace by that point. January 08, we were already on a long year and a half, 2-year slide from the peak by the time that we saw a 4.5% unemployment rate. Folks, said all that to say this, the bottom that we're experiencing right now, bottom unemployment, historic lows, 2.7%, folks. We're sitting on it. We're sitting right where it was the last time it became untenable. Here's the real crazy thing. If the Fed thinks that we're literally going to come from a national number, we're at 3.4% nationally. We're going to go from 3.4 to 4.5 by the end of the year. That's a fast move, okay? In Florida's numbers, it took us July, August of 2006 to go from 2.5. It took almost 2 years for it to drift all the way to 4.5. That was about a year and 8 months, something like that. And we're talking about the Feds making those predictions because this is the most recent minutes they've got. They're saying, hey, this is going to be crazy. And the thing is, everybody is crossing their fingers, folks. The marketplace is putting out all kinds of press. Different people that are in, money managers and all this are going out in the news and saying, this is going to be so bad. They're saying, by the way, if the debt ceiling isn't reached, the interest rates will hit 8.4%. If an agreement to increase the debt ceiling is not reached, which is, so far as I'm shooting this video, an outstanding situation, which is probably more politics than anything, probably move on. But the reality is there's a massive amount of uncertainty in the market, folks. And the more uncertainty there is in the market, the higher those interest rates are going to get. And the reality is too, if we see the Fed go past the current interest rate levels, those are going to be some of the highest interest rates we've seen. That is going to put this economy in a pressure cooker like we have not seen in modern times. Again, I don't have time to take you through the graph and the history of how the Feds managed interest rates, but I'm telling you, folks, the interest rates have been held so low in the past 2 decades. I mean, it is not normal. We don't sustain 5+% interest rates in this modern cycle with the everything bubble the way it is. Everything is off the charts, historically expensive. This whole idea of the Fed saying that a healthy marketplace is 2% price growth year over year. 2% is a healthy inflation rate at their own definition. Folks, the housing market in Florida would have to come down 40-50% to meet that goal. Folks, here's a couple conversations I want to have in the comments below. Number one, do you think that the interest rates are going up at the next Fed meeting? In June, are they jacking those rates up again? Number two, do you think that housing is going to continue to appreciate over the next 5 years? Because if you think this time it's different, you have to believe that inflation is not going to be brought under heel. It's going to go up. The marketplace doesn't sit still. It's going to either curl towards the buyers and you're going to see price correction, or it's going to remain in control by the sellers. It's going to be, if at lucky, a balanced market, but more than likely seller favored, and it's going to inflate. Okay. Do you think we're going to stay in an inflationary economy for shelter costs, particularly for ownership of houses in the next 5 years? And thirdly, do you think that the housing market will correct to a point back of a price two years ago? Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.